As I was walking down the street
one day,
I'd love to do like a poetry recital and do it all just, rock song lyrics.
The words of Robert Lamb.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
Good morning. Welcome.
Doing all right?
Welcome, one and all, to the Morning Exiles Podcast. For this Wednesday morning, we are at La Divina. A reminder, while you can't use the dining room for now, Lance will make you a wonderful, wonderful breakfast. I consider it to be the best breakfast in town. You can come pick it up. That goes for lunch and dinner as well. And Kevin, what is the magic number?
It is so good. You dial 225-771-8488. That's 771-8488, the 225 area code, and they will hook you up. Look, they'll come right out, contact-free delivery, right to the window of your car. All you got to, you give them your credit card or your ATM number to pay for the meal, and they'll bring it out to you. And nobody needs to touch, breathe on one another, or anything of that nature. And for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you just can't beat La Divina. I love them.
I tell you what, fabulous. And
they're fabulous.
Yeah, and if they have a dinner special, we'll let you know before we leave the premises, as it were. I was watching with great interest, Kevin. You and I were talking about it on the TV show, about the Reverend Spell getting hooked up by Central PD.
Mm-hmm.
And the chief did a press conference afterwards. And, of course, Reverend Spell went and got booked at parish prison. They found he had some outstanding warrants. Outstanding, Reverend. Outstanding.
It wasn't criminal warrants, I don't think. It was,
It was traffic warrants.
But
he's obviously too good and too holy to go pay his traffic tickets or to appear in court and say why he shouldn't have to pay them.
Yeah, okay.
Seriously. And, I mean...
The guy's clearly got...
issues.
He's clearly got an ego situation going on. So, yeah.
But one of these was in Zachary. I mean, that should be fertile ground for him. He could have gone, paid his ticket, and recruited. He could have driven up there on the bus. Drive with me to salvation, you sinners!
One of the things that he said that was disputed, we were talking about this yesterday, he disparaged the protester that he almost hit, or he came within 3 feet of hitting with the church bus. And I saw a video yesterday somebody shared on Facebook, and it showed that same guy. And, yeah, he was doing all the things that Reverend Spell said he did, crotch-grabbing, abusive language, middle finger, all that, along with holding up his protest sign. But still, does that not... We're going to ask Franz in a minute, because let me pull back the camera shot and include our friend Franz Borghardt, attorney at law. Hi, Franz. Crotch-grabbing, finger flipping, and some cussing. To what extent is that illegal, or is it protected by free speech when one is a protester?
I think this is going to be a quick answer.
So, private property.
Sorry, I didn't have your mic.
Is it private or public property?
He was on the roadway.
He was
on the roadway.
He was on the roadway, on the shoulder of the road.
So I've said this multiple times now. If someone is doing something lewd or lascivious, profane, you can call the police. It may be a misdemeanor. You certainly should not, quote unquote, confront them. This is the pastor's words. Pastor said, I was going to confront him. Very Christian-like, confront.
And then he decided to conrear him
well,
with the bumper of the bus.
So here's the problem, guy. You tell me when you're ready to talk about the bus backing up on the grass in his direction. But so the protester, whether we like it or not, enjoys the same constitutional rights as the pastor does. He enjoys the same constitutional rights as anyone who is exercising their free speech. It is not an absolute right, so it cannot be absolute, just like the right to free exercise of religion is not absolute. So, yeah, I don't think that works. I don't think it works. He's not a vigilante. He doesn't get to take the law into his own hands. It doesn't look like he was on the church property. Now, if the guy's on the church property and the property is private, you're still limited to what you can do to take the law into your own hands.
I don't see any statute that says you can run him over with a bus. I don't see that.
Well, they didn't run him over.
It's not self-defense.
You could tell that he intentionally stopped short. He was trying to intimidate him, but he was trying to intimidate him with a friggin' bus.
He brought a bus to a word fight.
Yeah. Well,
and then he thought he was being some kind of a hero for not getting out of the bus and getting into a physical confrontation with the guy.
Well, he thinks he's some sort of hero for getting up out of bed
as I
every
said,
morning.
I've seen videos out there. It's on Facebook of that protest dude being a jackass. But is he allowed to be a jackass?
Well, unfortunately, in our society, and in my opinion, by the way, is anyone who involves himself in a protest has got a little jackass in him, because the last one that worked was Dr. King at the National Mall.
I don't know what kind of nobility goes into protesting Spell. In fact, it may have the counterproductivity of giving this guy attention that he doesn't need. We don't need to. And look, I've said this from day one. This guy wants to get arrested. I wanted him to stop. Now, the irony is, Kevin, he's now been arrested for a crime of violence and not a constitutional stand your ground kind of scenario. So,
Well, they had him there for just a few hours. Apparently, they just kept him in the holding cell because they knew his bail was going to be made. The things, the warrants that he had, they carried them over to July, I believe. So they cut him a break on that. But here's the thing, Franz. When you get, with what you do for a living, you have to be a pretty damn good psychologist. And I contend, unless somebody with superior knowledge and training tells me differently, I contend that this has been handled wrong from the very beginning, because the government not taking appropriate action, which they were allowed under law to do, has empowered this guy, and now he's almost got to hold face in front of his flock.
So it is seldom that we hear politicians and law enforcement leaders say we don't want to arrest our way to a resolution. Mm-hmm. That's the words of the chief, the governor, other leaders.
Many times.
So I use the analogy, if my client is breaking the law by driving while impaired, are you not going to arrest your way to a disposition on that? You're going to let that driver drive drunk? Because you're letting this pastor, regardless of whether or not you believe that the governor's order is constitutional or not, you have to legally challenge that. Mm-hmm. The most absurd thing I've heard this week was the analogy or the comparison that someone compared Spell to Martin Luther King.
Whoa!
Oh, I saw that.
You saw that?
Wholly inappropriate.
In the context of, in their
civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience, both historically in their own times, they were viewed as civilly disobedient. Both have been arrested for advocating for what they believe. No, that doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Are they suggesting that his churchgoers are oppressed?
I don't know.
Judging by some of the wardrobe I saw, maybe they are.
That's inappropriate. I was a little distressed to see the party outside the parish prison when he was released, because that was it was the same deal. It was a whole lot more than 10 people gathered, not practicing social distancing, and a lot of hugs and stuff like that. Again, at some point, this guy should just say, you know what, let's just keep this. Let's just have the wife and a couple of family members meet me and pick me up and take me home.
Had anybody ever heard of this guy before all this?
No.
What has the government given him?
Fame.
Power.
Well, yeah, but what happens?
Going back to your DWI client, and what happens if he tells the cop, "I'll be back tomorrow night at 7:30 to do it again"?
Right.
Just like the Reverend said at the gates of the parish prison.
So, ordinarily, and look, I know the criminal defense attorney for the pastor. Ordinarily, the criminal case, the 6 counts of whatever disobedience, is very resolvable. The ag assault, very resolvable. But the problem is I see this guy using the criminal justice system to get the attention that he won't get once he no longer has the restrictions on the church. Right? Mm-hmm. So the only way he can stay relevant after the governor lifts the stay-at-home order, the only way he can stay relevant is if he does stuff to sensationalize what's going on. And again, to reemphasize he was arrested not on a constitutional violation. He was arrested for allegedly leading a human being to believe he was going to hit him with the bus.
Well, there's going to be more.
Do you think this gets tossed, or do you think that they will prosecute for the bus?
I have predicted, and I will say it on the air with you guys, I think there will be an incident of violence at the church at some point. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying the pastor will be violent. There will be an incident of violence.
No, there's some very zealous people who just don't want this church to be open during.
Well, are they looking for the guy in the white pickup truck who made that swerve?
I gotta tell you, the pastors, I'm not saying he didn't commit aggravated assault. It's defensible. There are arguments to his defense on that one.
Okay.
The white truck incident, I don't know who was driving the white truck. The white truck incident where he veers off the road and almost smashes into a protester, there's no way around that. That is incredibly dangerous and definitely violates the law. Definitely a reckless operation, definitely an aggravated assault. But I mean, again, context, perspective. This is a church. What is going on?
Well, I mean, even yesterday, I don't know if you've seen the video of when they actually met him out front and put the cuffs on him.
Right.
I saw the video. And he flared up. He started to throw an elbow. Don't take my Bible! And the cops were like, okay, we'll take your Bible and give it to your guy here. But that could have very easily been a resisting arrest charge right there.
Well, it would have been a resisting arrest charge for a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So the unfortunate reality is, again, context and perspective. We have a Supreme Court, we have law enforcement all trying not to make arrests on misdemeanors. Okay? We're trying to keep law enforcement safe, the prisons safe. We're trying not to put people in harm's way. And now we have to arrest him for a misdemeanor because he essentially is accused of trying to hit somebody with a bus. It's just...
You know, here's the deal. Anybody with any amount of common sense, if it's the first time for him or anybody else, and you go and say, look, we have an order from the governor, this is deemed to be dangerous and not in the interests of public health, would you please disperse and stay dispersed? And if he says, okay, the first time, let him off with a warning, say fine. But when they repeatedly do it, and you don't, and you're sitting at the top of the pinnacle on this, it's your order, your signature, and you're saying, no, we're not going to arrest anybody. You have empowered this guy. Oh, and by the way, everybody else that wants to give a middle finger to your order.
Let me ask this, why can't we just let them go to their church services and then just quarantine them? And I'm not saying imprison them within the church, just saying, okay, you may go from home to church to home.
Well, how are you going to enforce that? Well, you got a 5-member police force in Central?
Well, but we do have a sheriff's department who
Well, they
apparently have washed their
So
hands.
we know
Exactly.
We know that there was a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiating going on. We can gather that somebody who's probably more intelligent than I am realized that if you arrest this guy for every violation, he's just going to make bond and do it again. The bond is the bond on a misdemeanor is negligible. He's just going to do it again. And so I think the calculus was we really cannot, quote unquote, stop him. Now, I will say this, second time I've said this today, the difference now is this guy is out on a bond. And something that we all need to pay attention to on a bond is one of the innate conditions of a bond.
I know where you're going.
Is that you remain arrest and conviction free.
And defense free.
If you violate that, the district judge has the authority to revoke your bond and place a bond hold on you to where you cannot, are you ready? Bond out. So, if he gets arrested again, does that district court judge, and candidly, guys, I don't know who set the bond. It was a 19 JDC judge. I don't know who set the bond. Will that judge, would the DA's office have the authority to say, Judge, we're filing an emergency motion to revoke his bond on a new arrest, and there needs to be a hold on him? Now, politically, would a judge do that? Probably not. But it is relevant. You also can be held in contempt for violating the conditions of a bond. Mm-hmm. So
I think pretty much everybody holds him in contempt right now. Yeah. It doesn't seem to matter.
Well, there are those who are kind of contemptuous of the police. that, hey, good policing. In a time of crisis, this is what you're concerned with. I've seen those posts. I've seen posts that said, they have the right to assemble. Nobody has taken that right away from us yet. And so there are people that don't necessarily support the pastor, but support the right to assembly. These are a lot of the same people that are saying it's time to go back to work.
Well,
as I said yesterday on the TV show,
arguments, though.
I know, but what we're headed for, Bill, as I said yesterday on a TV show, we're headed for a clash of ideologies. We got the people that say, hunker down, stay home for as long as it takes. I don't care how many businesses are ruined. I don't care how many lives are ruined. I don't care how many houses go bankrupt, homes go bankrupt. I don't care. We got to do what's right to save lives. And then there are the people saying, I'm dying over here. I got to start making some money again. So, and we're headed for a clash of some kind. I'm not talking about war in the streets. I'm not talking about sticks and clubs, but we're headed for a clash of these two ideologies. The people that want to get started again, want to crank this thing back up, feel like we've been lied to about the severity of it, and those who are accepting the severity of it and what they're being told, lock, stock, and barrel, and say, you're not doing the responsible thing. You need to stay home until September if they tell you to.
Well, I don't think anybody is going to advocate that. And I don't think there's anybody that's publicly saying, I don't care how many businesses are lost, how many jobs are lost. I think everybody wants to get back. But we're not at that point yet. But let's not mix the arguments.
It's difficult to compare a business owner who has been mandated to shut down to a church that is defying an order.
Well, and that's where we started. When you're the cops, you don't get to decide which crimes you enforce.
I mean,
and that's really the argument here.
In a modern world with body cameras, a lot of police discretion is gone. It is not the executive branch enforces law. That is what the executive branch's job is. Law enforcement, their job is to enforce law. And you're absolutely right. The failure to enforce law causes an erosion. The optics are horrible because what it puts me in a position to do is to say, as a citizen, if you're not going to support or enforce the law as to this person, why am I following the law?
Well, and again, I don't know who posted that fine use of police forces, at a time of crisis. Well, as I said, they don't get to choose which laws they enforce. And this is not just tangential to the crisis. This is right in the bullseye center of the crisis. A high probability of passing along contagion.
Some could argue they're not enforcing a law. It's not a law. It's not a statute. It's not written down anymore.
But we went through this at the beginning. It is a law. It's RS 29-70. It is a law when it's signed by the governor.
So let's circle to that point. If you believe it's not a law, there's lawful ways for you to challenge that law. Mm-hmm. Okay? He could file, and we've talked about this before, guys. He can file a declaratory action in state court saying, Judge, I want you to declare this unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. And until you declare it unconstitutional, I'm asking for a stay order to any and all enforcement of it because it tramples on my civil rights. He didn't do that. Why would he do that?
Well, now, here's the thing. And I asked you this very same thing. It's like, this is a good example of if 8 people tell you you're drunk, it's time to sit down.
Right.
I asked you about his attorneys. I asked you if they were Joe Schmoes or if they were good attorneys. You told me they're both good attorneys.
Right. It's client control.
So why haven't they gone and filed that motion if they felt that they were on firm legal ground?
So I don't know the inner workings of their legal tactics, but I will tell you from firsthand experience, we don't always have control over our clients. It's counterintuitive, right? You're paying me for my advice, my expertise, my knowledge, and you choose not to listen to it. Okay, well, that's your right. But if, for example, I say to a client, please stop doing press conferences, the client doesn't necessarily always listen to me. So I think part of the issue is client control, and part of the issue is it is sexier and higher profile for him not to file an action and to just get the attention he's doing. Right? He wouldn't be on TM. Look, he would have gotten PR from a court filing, but then someone gets to make the decision. A judge gets to make the decision, and he's in a better PR position to go to TMZ, CNN, and say, nobody can make this decision but God. I mean, it's hard to fight that
and speaking,
logic.
And speaking through me.
Yes.
But, I am reminded that we have come to have a pretty fair group hatred in this country over a very long period of time for people who believe they are taking their orders from God, such as the Japanese who thought the emperor was divine, such as the people who fly airplanes into buildings who think that they are doing God's bidding.
Yeah,
Just because this guy happens to recognize a God that is in favor with most of us doesn't mean you don't have the same type of mental action going on right there.
So 2 points. One, this is not to your point. This is nothing historically new. People have done terrible things in the name of religion. This is nothing, and that's not Christianity. I mean, that's across the board.
As long as there's been religion.
Yeah.
We kicked their ass during the Crusades.
Second thing, the irony for me is I'm a big proponent of civil rights. I have filed civil rights lawsuits on behalf of clients against the government. 95% of my cases is the government versus my client. I'm a big proponent of that, but I'm also a big proponent of the well-being of everybody. And if everybody is just being asked for now to stay in it, and look, Kevin, I get it. I don't blame a business owner for being on ready to go back to work.
I want them back at business now.
Yeah, I get that. But, those business owners are at least respecting what the governor is saying. La Divina would love to be back in business, to have guests in here on a regular basis eating, but they're respecting what the governor has said. And this guy in Central is not doing that. And it's going to get more people sick,
He's already lost one member of his congregation. His lawyer is sick.
Well, and not only that, but they counted at the last service, and they said there were only 130 people that came. Now, he had been boasting between 800 and 1,000, and they verified at least 300 or 400 at one of them.
Why does a pastor need to lie about numbers?
Power.
Yeah.
You know what this meant with Hitler, right? With Hitler, right? You had in your history lesson. You know what that means?
Promise margarine.
No. Millions stand behind me. Millions stay hinter mir. Okay? The numbers are important to him. But here's the deal. So the people that aren't attending now, are they scared or are they sick? And we may never know.
Or both.
Or both.
Well, the beauty for this guy is, that's the beauty of this virus, is you won't be able to tell where people contracted it. Right? I mean, if you've been going to services and you get it, the argument will always be, like Jeff Wittenbrink said, well, I went to Lowe's, I went to all these places. The problem is the recklessness puts everybody else in harm's way.
Well, and again, if 4 or 5 more people from that church test positive, then it's going to be called a cluster. Now, Jimmy Guidry could have called it a cluster with the 2 that they've got, but he has decided not to do that. Again, why? I don't know.
Leslie makes a point that he not only does not respect the governor or his order, he has openly called law enforcement liars. He's also called the coroner a liar and insinuated that the coroner doesn't know how to pronounce a death certificate. Let's see, what else does Leslie say here? He said publicly not to trust them, which is very dangerous ground, she says.
Yeah, he said never trust any cop.
So I've not always been on the same side as Dr. Clark. I've had a lawsuit where we deposed Dr. Clark. I don't always agree with some of his conclusions, but I would say that he's a pretty good coroner. And in my line of work, if someone is being called a liar, the question becomes, why would they lie, right? What would be the motive?
For them? Yeah.
Well, what's in it for him? All he said was this person died as a result of COVID-19. He didn't say from the church. He just says this person died as a result or a complication with regard to it. So why would this coroner lie?
Well, he has no motivation to lie.
Right.
He has no motivation at all. Stanley asked, could there be a court order to keep them from entering the building? I don't think so, but let's ask the lawyer. It's their building.
So we talked about this last time I was here. The quarantine, what state health official?
Jimmy Guidry.
Jimmy
Dr.
Guidry.
State health officer.
Yeah, he has the authority to lock the door.
And put the keys in his pocket.
Yeah, and quarantine it. Okay? That is...
Now, not with them inside. Don't get confused.
No. It's not...
But he could chain up the doors and say,
Yeah.
entry is not permitted.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he do so? Hot potato.
Well, he works for John Bell, and John Bell said we're not going to arrest our way out of this. He works for the governor.
Well, they're not offering to arrest anybody. Just put some chains and padlocks on the doors and say you can't go in there.
You know, I mean...
But I guarantee you they'll go someplace else. They'll be in their own parking lot. Wasn't there was it Florida or was it Georgia, one of the states, they were actually having services in the parking lot, and the police came and ran them off.
That was Mississippi.
Mississippi, our next door neighbor. But they were having their church services in the parking lot and maintaining social distancing, but they came and ran them off because there were more than 10 of them gathered.
And they wrote $500 tickets before. It was a small town, and they saw a revenue source.
Hey.
And they've had to no process all those tickets and apologize.
So to me, the callousness, the coldness comes in the form of he obviously has enough money to get buses.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's a bus.
He got a bunch of them, though.
Plus, that's no cheap building.
Yeah, he's got money in that church. There would be means and methods of broadcasting this service to his congregation. And if they can't afford a computer or an iPad or Wi-Fi, he has the means to help them with that. There are government programs to help you with that. And he is choosing not to do that. It's a choice.
But he posts to social media when he says, hand over your stimulus checks to me. He doesn't have a problem using social media for that.
Well,
I think that was a huge... I mean, I'm not a PR guy, guys. I'm not a marketing PR guy, but that was a mistake.
For me personally, lest anybody think I'm taking a side when I say we're headed for a clash of these two ideologies. Me personally, of course, we have to get out to do things like this podcast. We have a television show. We practice social distancing as much as possible. When I go places like the store, I'm wearing gloves in case I touch something that's got the virus on it.
I like the ones that don't have any fingers. You wear the mittens.
Yeah, and they're very stylish. But I'll continue to do what people are recommending for as long as they continue to recommend it. But I worry about the livelihoods that are going to be lost. I worry about the households that are going to be wrecked. I do worry about these, even though my household's not in any imminent danger because I ain't making any money anyway. But I worry about that we'll come to some kind of a clash. Now, like I said, will it be, in a parking lot somewhere or in the streets? I don't know, but you've got these two very vocal.
We have protests scheduled for this weekend.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I am very worried about our good friend Lance and his wife Mary. I am worried about business in Baton Rouge, which is largely a service business. And I would like to get people back to work immediately. I don't think the phase-in is going to be helpful. In fact, it might show a lot of small businesses how quickly they can fail. Someone told me yesterday that most of the restaurants, if they say you can reopen your dining room, but it has to be at 25% of your capacity.
Oh, I think that's unreasonable.
They'll go
50.
broke. No, even at 50, they'll go broke within 2 weeks. Now, I think what we need to do, in my opinion, is we need to be a little smarter about picking and choosing our battles. I think you need to cordon off the nursing homes. I think you need to make sure hospital admissions are under doctor's order only. I think you still need to have large gatherings of more than, I would say, 300 people. If you can't do social distancing with 300, you can't have a large gathering. Because I think we're watching the suicide rate rise. We're watching the domestic violence rate rise. Mm-hmm. We are watching kids that have a lot of time on their hands and not much to do with it. And I just think we need to start doing things sensibly. And I think that one of the reasons in the Wuhan province that things plateaued and started to fall, and I'm not advocating we do this, but I'm using it as an example, okay, is they were like, oh, you got a fever, we're taking you away. And you saw the video of it. In other words,
They also cordoned Wuhan off. Nobody got in.
and
nobody got
by the
out.
way, they're thinking of doing that for New Orleans right now. But
Mandate to wear masks.
cordoning it off, checkpoints coming in and out of the
Right,
city.
but there's discussions. I don't know if she's issued it, but a discussion about making people wear masks.
And
Okay, when you're talking about Mayor Cantrell?
Mayor Cantrell.
Did you see the video of Mayor Cantrell getting ready to make her "You won't bully me" statement? She's standing there while someone's doing the introduction and the preliminaries, and she's got her mask in her hand, and she's wiping her brow and her cheek. She's wiping her sweat. She must have done it 3 times. And then she puts the mask around her neck, but she never, it never made it up over the nose. It's like, this woman, I'm not too sure about her. I'm not too sure.
Well,
And it's great. Mandate everybody wear a mask. Where are you going to get them?
Is it constitutional to mandate the mask? And I said, candidly, is it unreasonable? I mean, if you can get the mask, yeah. That's a lovely mask, by the way, Kevin.
Look what I have. I got a mask.
have you
They
tried
told
that?
me they told me to wear a mask, and I went to the store the other day, and I was wearing my Batman cowl, and they said,
No, you can't do that.
not that kind of mask.
Now what you do is put the nose piece up.
Put the nose piece up top and pinch it over your nose.
Pinch your nose first.
Well, I got headphones on. I'm not
Model it.
gonna.
Yeah, you don't need to hear yourself.
Don't you have one with you?
Mine's in the car.
I dare say that these things
No,
won't.
white side in, blue side out.
Well, damn, now you tell me.
White side in, blue side out. Come on, we're gonna make you look like Dr. Kildare here. All right, now look at the hair. Look at that beautiful flowing hair, and up higher on the nose, Kevin. Up there, you go. Now down over the chin.
Pull it over the chin, and then you go, "No,
All right, madam."
I am your father."
No, that's when you walk and say, all right, madam, would you please disrobe?
All right, doctor, I've got
Doctor?
my clothes off.
Doctor?
What do you want me to do with them? Drop them on the floor like I did mine.
So I call it a Custer's last stand scenario. Where do you want to fall? Where do you want to fall? Do you want to fall challenging the constitutionality of wearing masks? Is that
Seems
the
kinda
hot?
silly.
Is that the hill you want to die on?
Yeah.
Or do you want to? And look, I don't. Again, big fan of civil liberties, big fan of your rights, but guys, I mean, and here's the question: if the governor said we can open everything back up if you wear a mask, all the businesses you care about, you'd wear a mask, wouldn't you?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, I would absolutely wear a mask to help everybody out. But there's going to be that 1% that
Franz.
says,
How are you going to eat sushi in a mask? You're gonna
same way I smoke
Pull the
cigar.
mask
Same
down.
way I smoke cigar in a mask.
Oh, speaking of masks, I saw this, and I have, this is actually available. Somebody has what looks like a little tiny pair of cut-off shorts with ear loops, and you undo the fly, and you put your beer bottle in, you take your drink, and then you zip it back up. And that's your mask.
It's amazing the way that we found ways to find humor
But,
in this whole thing.
fellas, think about it this way. I would have no problem in the world when this is all over with if good lawyers go to the court and say, now, for next time, is it constitutional to require people to wear a mask? Yes or no? Is it constitutional to shut down church gatherings that are there specifically for religious services of more than 50 people? Yes or no? We can determine all of this later, can't we?
So the irony of this pastor and his congregants is we've actually litigated this issue before. Mm-hmm. Now, we may not have litigated it in the context of a pandemic, but again, a government has the authority, whether we like it or not. And look, there's a lot of things the government has the authority to do that we don't necessarily like. It doesn't mean you get to trample on the law, but the government has the authority if it does a thing for a secular purpose, and clearly we're in an emergency state. Mm-hmm. Now, we may disagree on what needs to be shut down and what doesn't need to be shut down, but the problem is we've litigated this from a constitutional standpoint.
Well,
But you're right. It won't stop somebody from filing a suit on behalf of a church if they want to do that.
well, and we can do all of this later.
Yeah.
if we need to and say, all right, next time this happens, and there will be a next time. I don't know.
A second wave.
Well, no, it might be next year. It might be 5 years from now. There will be a next time.
Gents, do we want to spend any time talking about the Ramos decision in the U.S. Supreme Court?
I would like to talk about that, and I tell you what, it's a sissy drink. It ties up a bartender way too long. You can't get another scotch when he's dancing around with that shaker like a Kansas City faggot. I'm talking about the Ramos Gin Fizz. You ever been in a bar and ordered your own drink when somebody's making one of those?
I had no idea what the hell you were talking about.
30 minutes. 30 minutes. The bartender's got to do the cucaracha with the damn thing.
I'm just thinking you and I are going to, we're going to have people picketing this program because you just said faggot.
That's apparently a bad. That's apparently
I said Kansas City faggot. Let's get it right.
Okay. So we're not in Kansas City, so don't be offended.
Jumping around like a Kansas City faggot.
Franz, basically, for people, myself included, who didn't know what the Ramos decision was, this is about non-unanimous jury votes.
So I want you to think of all the cases that were pending that happened before the enactment of our constitutional amendment that required unanimous jury. Pending cases, or cases that went to trial before it went into enactment. So I'm not talking about cases that were finalized and done with. Mm-hmm. So if you fall into this Goldilocks, the porridge is just right, it was a pending case, the Supreme Court has said you're entitled to constitutionally, you're entitled to a unanimous jury under the Sixth Amendment and as it's incorporated by the 14th Amendment to the states. So what will happen is anybody that's pending, that hasn't gone to trial yet, he or she gets a unanimous jury. Anybody, the case also says, anybody that was convicted where the decision is still, which is to say that it's in the appellate system, they're going to get a new trial. Mm-hmm. So I have two clients right now. I don't know if you recall me trying a case in Clinton, aggravated rape.
I do.
It was a responsive verdict, non-unanimous. That guy most likely will get a new trial. Jace Crahan, who Carson Marcantel and I represented, depending on where he is.
Case,
depending on where he is in the appellate system, and assuming he wants us to represent him, we may end up trying his case again. There are a lot of these cases, and look, the Supreme Court says in its decision, and this, by the way, this is a conservative Supreme Court, says in the decision, hey, look, we realize that this is going to be somewhat inconvenient. You're going to have to retry some of these cases, but that's kind of the price of liberty and justice. And so that is why Ramos is very significant. Now, the next question that's not dealt with in the case, but the Supreme Court says that they know it's coming, is this right to a unanimous jury going to be retroactive with cases that fall outside of that Goldilocks patch, cases that are well done 10, 15 years ago, and the Supreme Court basically said, hey, we know it's coming.
I read the decision because you were kind enough to send it to me. And one of the judges agreed with the entire decision except for the two sentences about stare decisis.
Stare decisis,
Would you please explain that to people?
So Kavanaugh writes about the history of stare decisis. It's basically let the decision stand, right?
Let's let the decision stand to avoid
inconsistent applications, and so we want our umpires in the legal system to call balls and strikes consistently, right? This is not new. What's interesting about that opinion, Bill, and I know we're limited on time. What's interesting on that opinion, and what's interesting about Kavanaugh writing that is what's in the pipeline. A lot of jurist scholars think that concurrence had to do with Roe v. Wade. Because we already have Clarence Thomas, who's previously said on the record, look, stare decisis and staying consistent with our decisions is not about us not addressing previous decisions that were erroneous. Mm-hmm. So if we made a decision in error, we can fix that error. And so what are you setting the some people believe that decision about stare decisis, and by the way, the Ramos case did deal with, this is how we decided some other decisions. This is how we're going to decide it differently. So some people feel that with stare decisis, what Kavanaugh was getting at was what's being telegraphed for a future decision on whether or not the court's going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Now, I'm not saying that's accurate. That is the belief of why would he write a concurrence that dealt with that?
Well, and that's still a reach. You got time for one more, Kevin?
Yeah.
Franz, you got time? Because you might have an opinion on this as well.
I'm here.
I saw a Facebook post that you put up yesterday, Kevin, and I thought it was very, very interesting. And what we're talking about is the medical examiner in New York City going back and taking deaths that were undetermined or presumptive and now classifying them
Counting them as COVID deaths.
And you know, I thought your post was very appropriate, and I actually replied to it. And I have got to say, I don't understand what the hell they're trying to accomplish. Because cause of death presumptive doesn't change the fact that somebody is dead, and it is a perfectly honest way a death certificate. And this bothered me a great deal. I'll give you a personal example. My father was found dead after about a day and a half, sitting in his favorite spot on the couch with the TV remote in his hand. All right? It was a sudden, unexplained death. He was only 63 years old. Now, instead of going to an inquest and autopsy, or an inquest or autopsy, his doctor said, look, he's had a lifelong asthma, he had COPD, his cholesterol was very high, and he smoked cigarettes 2 packs a day. I'm going to presume he died from a heart attack. And so they agreed with that. And presumptive cause of death, acute myocardial infarction or sudden cardiac death syndrome.
And that's fine if nobody could test it.
Well, and again, what is wrong with these people in New York? Why does he want to
my-
make it look like people are lying?
So when
My
you
father's COD is also presumptive because my mom did not want him to be autopsied.
And to your point, why do they want to look like they're lying? I thought your
So-
post was very
Yeah.
probative.
is there a legal effect that is correlated to the cause of death? Does it affect insurance policies? Does it affect liability on potential civil claims? I haven't looked at, I'm not a life insurance attorney. I have not read any life insurance policies, even my own, shamefully to admit that. But let's say the life insurance policy says pandemic virus excluded. Okay? Are you changing by tinkering with causes of death? Are you changing something? Are you affecting legal rights? Are you affecting legal causes of action?
I think you would be.
Yeah. And again, I don't know New York law. I'm not a New York lawyer, but I think that's going to be the problem, right? The problem's going to be, okay, look, crystal ball, we're going to have COVID-19 lawsuits, right? We're going to have people suing employers for working compensation because they got sick on the job, even though they may not be able to prove that they got sick on the job. We're going to see a lot of lawsuits and litigation about this. The question's going to be, let's say someone had a life insurance policy, and there's an exclusion provision based on you dying from pneumonia versus you dying from pneumonia that's related to a pandemic. I don't know what the end game is here.
There's a couple of things here. And Jack, by the way.
Jack's my buddy.
Yeah. Are deaths that are determined to be caused by COVID-19 proven to be so by having a COVID test post-mortem? Or if they had a test before they came to the hospital and they died while they're there, then it's COVID-related. But yes, you have to have some sort of a test. Now, what they're saying is because of symptoms and patient presentation, that means the condition of the patient within the hospital, they're presuming that they had COVID. Well, then make it a presumptive factor. But more to your point, Franz, and to the point you made yesterday, Kevin, a lot of these MEs are going now and they're saying, but there is a guy, last Thursday that was having chest pain, and we couldn't get him into a bed quickly enough because of the number of COVID patients, and he died in the emergency room, probably of a heart attack, but we're going to call that COVID-19 related. And, you have enough people that sit there and think everybody is lying to them. Why would you do this?
See, and that's what's happened is we've got this, we now don't know what to believe because we have been lied to. We've been lied to, and we've had official information that has proved to be incorrect in only a couple of days. Were they lying when they gave us the official information that was incorrect? No, not necessarily, but I think that because we've had them come back and say, mask is good. No, mask isn't going to help. No, wear a mask. I mean, and all sorts of things like this. Jane raises a good point. She says, I have a friend who is a hospital CEO, has a doctorate in infectious disease. He told me that if a person gets hit by a car, goes to the hospital for his injuries, and dies as a result of those injuries, but while they're there, they test him for COVID, and he tests positive, even though he died from being hit by a car, he'll be lumped into the COVID death category.
Well,
in other words, everybody that has died with it is being termed as dying from it.
Well, and again, I understand that, and you have to make the distinction. If he tests positive and he died from his automobile accident injuries, the cause of death should be his injuries, and they should note that he was also carrying the COVID virus, because you're going to want to do contact tracing and see if anybody in his family. But to call it a COVID death is simply disingenuous.
Well, it's a lie.
Yeah,
it's a straight up lie.
You know, again, I use my Fort Dix, New Jersey analogy.
Referring back to my question it's not a question of are we being lied to, it's a question of why we're being lied to and who stands to gain from the lying.
Well, see, I don't see where anybody really stands to gain anything. But again, you know, we talk about, CDC says, mask isn't going to protect you that much. And then they say, but, it protects other people from you. Go ahead and put it on. And the thing is, this is evolving. So their information changes. And a lot of times...
They should have known the efficacy of a damned mask before now.
But, they're right both ways. The mask that you have, that I have, we have the same one.
It's to protect other people from us.
It's to protect our droplets. If we sneeze or cough, we're going to stay inside that mask, okay? They're not going to go on this counter or the microphone Franz uses, although I did hork on that right before he got there, just as my own scientific test.
I also gave it a lick right before we started.
This is my own scientific test. I want to see how resilient he really is. But only the N95 is going to protect you from viral particles. So it's the thing is, we would love our scientists to be able to say, all right, on April 2nd at 11 a.m., you need to tell me absolutely everything that is going to stop this disease by midnight the next day, and they can't. The information changes as this evolves. I mean, look at South Dakota. All right, look at South Dakota. They had 14 cases in the whole damn state until the Smithfield pork packing plant blew up, okay? Now up to 600 confirmed cases through tests, 2 deaths. They didn't take into account the fact that you are going to have buyers from supermarkets in big cities that are going to come and visit that plant and pick their pork, as it were, and maybe they had been exposed in Chicago or St. Louis, or New York or Atlanta, and they brought the virus in with them, and all of a sudden it goes exponentially. And that's the thing. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But I do know this, and I think you hit it on the head, Kevin, is that they shouldn't be going in and changing death certificates simply because it occurred during COVID. That makes people not trust. Jane had asked, isn't Smithfield a Chinese-owned company? Yeah, it is. The Chinese bought the majority of Smithfield about 4 years ago. But all the meat that is handled there is American meat from nearby hog farms in Iowa and Kansas. And so there's no Chinese product handled at that plant in South Dakota. I don't want to start another rumor,
Well, and please let's not talk about boycotting Smithfield ham, because you're talking about putting 20, 30,000 people out of work if you ruin Smithfield ham because they're Johnny. It's like, let's not overreact.
It's American workers, it's American farmers, it's American meat, it's American processing.
You want to blame somebody, blame Congress for letting all this buyout happen. Blame private industry for being forced to sell their companies in order to just keep afloat.
Well, Smithfield got a sweet deal on this, let me tell you what. Their shareholders made out like banditos.
Mm-hmm. Franz, any final words before we wrap things up?
What's going to be interesting to me is I've been asked about that factory. I've been asked about lawsuits as it relates. The hot topics that are going to be coming is workers' compensation. An employee who gets sick on the job having to establish that they got sick on the job in a jurisdiction where workers' compensation would be applicable. And we can tackle this at another time. The other issue is causation. Is figuring out how is it that I got this thing. Did I get it because I was going into work and I got it from somebody at work? Did I get it from going into the grocery store? Did I get it from going to a church in Central? Causation's going to always be a problem with
Well, and
this.
contact tracing is going to be very, very difficult because a lot of people are going to lie.
Yeah.
You know, the people who want to protect that reverend that maybe get COVID-19 are definitely going to say that they haven't been in contact with anybody in that church since Christmas of 2004.
Right.
You know, they're going to lie to protect the rev. You know, and
Because Christians would gladly die. Would gladly
That's what
die
he
from
said.
COVID-19. That's what his
That's-
words.
Well, and again, his own autopsy report, in conflict with Dr. Clark's, is that
His own autopsy report.
died of a broken heart because his nephew had died recently. That was his autopsy report.
Died of a broken
Always a
heart.
pleasure being on with you guys.
Well, and
Same here, Franz.
folks,
Thanks
we
for being
appreciate
with
your
us.
being with us. Television tomorrow on Cable 113, Open Air Channel 11, Digital Tuner 14.2, Digital Cable 1013, and tell your friends from Acadiana all the way to the Mississippi border in both directions, by the way, that we're on cable systems all over there, and we look forward to you joining us at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Until such case, be safe, be careful, and please don't be gullible. Don't be gullible.
Yep. And may God bless. Take care of yourself, okay?
Everlasting.